422. That's traffic. I'm Jim Alamonte on AM 560, The Answer.
Chicago's Morning Answer continues next, and your official Chicagoland weather forecast. From the 1-hour Heating and Air Conditioning Weather Center, our meteorologist Steve Williams.
A winter storm watch and a flood watch, both in effect tonight. Rain and drizzle today, high 47. Rain could be heavy tonight, low 34. Strong winds tomorrow, some freezing rain on surfaces and some snow, a coating to an inch, high 34. I'm Steve Williams on AM 560, The Answer.
46 degrees at O'Hare. Next news, 7:30. Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy continues next on AM 560, The Answer.
Listen to AM 560, The Answer, online at 560theanswer.com, on the AM 560 mobile app, and your Alexa-powered smart speaker, on TuneIn, iHeart, and radio.com. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft and Amy Jacobson on AM 560, The Answer.
Good morning, Dan and Amy, and the reaction from Beltway Media Flax to the news that it's highly likely that that Ukrainian airliner was downed by the Iranian government, the Iranian military. Whether it was an accident or whether it was purposeful is an imponderable at the moment. Susan Hennessy, she's a national security analyst for CNN. 176 completely innocent lives killed in the crossfire of reckless escalation. Just an unbelievable tragedy. The crossfire of reckless escalation. What was the crossfire here? It appears that a missile, I mean, I know Iranian authorities dispute this, but it appears that a missile,
two of them actually,
took down this airliner. Was there a response fire that we're unaware of? The crossfire?
I mean, it's turned into a bipartisan blame game. Pete Buttigieg, former mayor of South Bend, tweeted,
"It's not a bipartisan blame game. It's a partisan blame game."
Excuse me, partisan blame game. Innocent civilians are now dead because they were caught in the middle of an unnecessary and unwanted military tit for tat. My thoughts are with the families and loved ones of all 176 souls lost aboard this flight.
AP, the Associated Press. What began with a drone attack on a top Iranian general rippled outward until dozens of Iranian Canadians and dozens of Iranian students studying in Canada were dead. So the proximate cause of the Ukrainian airliner that was down is Donald Trump taking out a terrorist general responsible for, according to the State Department, more than 600 U.S. soldiers' deaths, not to mention thousands of Iraqi soldiers and civilians. Everybody conceding he was a bad guy, but you know who's worse? Trump. That's essentially what they're saying. Listen,
and I'm surprised that they haven't blamed him for the 56 people who were killed during the stampede, during Soleimani's funeral.
Right. Yeah. No,
is that next? Is that going to come next?
Military tit for tat, ripple effect. This is consistent with the offerings all week, starting with the reaction to the order on Soleimani. Listen to Chris Matthews. Let
me ask you about what we should have done. I go back to the congressman on this. You know, when some people die, you don't know what the impact's going to be. When Princess Diana died, for example, there was a huge emotional outpouring. Elvis Presley in our culture. It turns out that this general we killed was a beloved hero of the Iranian people, to the point where, look at the people we got pictures of now, these enormous crowds coming out. There's no American emotion in this case, but there's a hell of a lot of emotion on the other side. Should our leaders know what they're doing when they kill somebody?
Dear Lord.
Princess Di, and then I remember the royal family ordered a strike in all the British tabloids right after her death with Dodi Fayed. Not to mention the premise that he's a beloved general, a revered general, the Washington Post headline, just like al-Baghdadi was an austere religious scholar. Just remarkable. The worst person in the world, perhaps in American history, is Donald Trump. And no matter how bad you are, we need to maintain our focus on him because he is the greatest threat humanity's ever faced. They might as well just say that because that's what they're intimating.
Are they going to try to impeach him over this airliner going down?
Sure. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined again by Bret Baier, Fox News anchor, special report, 5 p.m. Chicago time during the week, and also his new book, 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. Bret Baier, thanks so much for joining us. It looks like we've avoided World War III for the moment.
Morning. Yeah, I think we have yet to know what we don't know about Shia militias and Hezbollah and what they could do. But yeah, the off-ramp was there. It seems like the Iranians are taking it. And if you're an Iranian official, at the senior levels especially, you've had a bad week. You've lost your top military guy and the guy that was steering all the terrorist activity throughout the Middle East. You, in a show of what you said was force, kind of had a fireworks display into Iraq. And then it looks like you accidentally, we don't know that definitively, but accidentally shot down a commercial airliner with your Russian surface-to-air missiles that are designed to take out jets coming in from opposing forces. I think that's a bad week. I think all of this stuff you're talking about, you're right. I mean, it is. I know people at home can see it. Remember, this whole thing started with the killing of an American contractor, a guy that was working with U.S. forces, got a family in Texas, and he was killed by a Shia militia, Iran. We struck back. Then there was the protest on the embassy that was an effort to close it down at one point. And then the administration says this target of opportunity comes up with the guy that's causing the most trouble in the Middle East and has been for years, Soleimani.
Well, are we safer with Soleimani dead rather than alive?
I think that's up for debate, but if you ask the CIA director, according to the New York Times and others, Gina Haspel told officials that the world is better off and the U.S. is better off and safer with Soleimani gone.
Turning to impeachment, Nancy Pelosi saying yesterday that, one, in a great act of sacrifice, she's not going to go to the 49ers-Vikings playoff game this weekend because she's saving the world. But in addition to that, she'll turn over those articles of impeachment when she's darn good and ready, except it'll probably be soon. She's feeling the pressure to move this along, especially with McConnell saying, we're going to move this along next week.
Yeah, I think the pressure is really coming from Democratic circles, much more vocal on the Senate side that is not under the thumb of Speaker Pelosi. It was really humorous to see the chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, Adam Smith, yesterday come out on CNN and say, really, we need to move this over to the Senate. And then moments later, as if a barrage had hit his door, he tweets out, I misspoke. Speaker Pelosi can do what she wants. So it's very funny to see. It happened a couple of times in the House. The Senate's much more vocal, and you have 8 Democratic senators saying, let's move this along. So I wouldn't be surprised if it happens today, actually, the articles of impeachment, maybe about 5 p.m. on a Friday, Washington dump.
That's right. Yep. Well, I mean, Dianne Feinstein came out to Politico and said the longer it goes on, the less urgent it becomes. And I think that, a lot of Americans can relate to that because she's been sitting on this for 3 weeks, and I don't understand why.
Well, I mean, according to Time Magazine, she watched John Dean on CNN and said, and he came up with this idea, and she thought it was good to kind of force the Senate's hand. The problem is that Mitch McConnell is not a guy that you force his hand often, and he's definitely not now because he has the votes. The people who were in the middle considering witnesses, and still are, have signed on to the process starting and opening arguments and then taking a vote about witnesses. The longer you go, the further this gets from the memory of the American people.
And I know much of the big government media was celebrating the chiding the White House took from Senators Mike Lee and Rand Paul after their briefing, the Senate briefing on the Iranian strike of Soleimani on Wednesday. And there's even a piece in Bloomberg suggesting Mike Lee could vote to convict and remove the president from office. You know, it's still this sort of fantasy scinario of how he's actually going to be convicted, except Mike Lee went on your show and said something very different than what leftist op-ed writers are suggesting. Exactly
opposite. Said on impeachment, said it's ridiculous. It shouldn't even be over here. And no, I vote, and yes, I will vote to dismiss right away. That's a little different than voting to convict. And then his problem is not with the intelligence. And in fact, he was behind the strike on Soleimani. That was lost in the translation and a lot of the coverage. He's a constitutionalist and believes that Congress needs to be in the loop and a active partner in decisions that involve the possibility of going to war. And so is Rand Paul. He's a little bit more skeptical about the intelligence. But Lee, for example, said Soleimani should have been taken out. So, yes, this often happens.
Yeah, but it was
when a Republican raises his hand and says, I have a problem with something, suddenly they are celebrated.
Yeah, did he talk about, his points of contention with the briefing? Because he did describe it as the worst briefing on a military issue that he'd seen in his 9-year congressional career.
Because he went on to clarify on the show yesterday that not because of the intelligence, but because of the fact that they would not say if they were stepping up and going to war and going to go after the Iranian president in Tehran, whether they would come to Congress or not. And that's his biggest issue on a constitutional war powers argument.
I wanted to get your take on where the Democrat and Democrat Socialist field for president stands. It's interesting op-eds this week with respect to Bernie Sanders. Everyone from Jason Riley, who is an op-ed writer or an editorial board member of the Wall Street Journal, to Matt Iglesias over at Vox, saying, Iglesias cheerleading Bernie Sanders. He's the best candidate. He's the best chance we have to beat Trump. Jason Riley saying, don't underestimate Bernie Sanders. He could very well be the nominee. I think it's unlikely he could be president. I don't want him to be president. But the D.C. press corps shouldn't be dismissing him. He's got staying power, as proven by the money he's raised and, frankly, just how he's come back, not just politically, but from a heart attack.
I mean, listen, the guy had a heart attack. The last candidate to have any health problems on the trail was Bradley, who had that and then fell off.
Yeah.
Bernie Sanders not only kicked it in high gear, but is tied for the lead, according to recent polls, in Iowa and New Hampshire, could very well win both of those. And he has the most money exponentially of the Democratic candidates. And he's also got a ground game. So I think it's right to not dismiss Bernie Sanders as a possible Democratic nominee. And
also this week it was announced that Mayor Pete is going to do a Fox town hall. Is there designs or confirmations for any of the other Democrat candidates to do such things?
We're working on it, and I think that there'll definitely be some others. There may be some other things that happen before the end of this process. That
care to share?
Little tease.
Involve questioning, but I can't go down that road yet. Okay. As they figure out that our eyeballs on Fox News are pretty significant and varied. You know, Democrats, independents, and Republicans watch Fox by big numbers over the other competition. I think that there is a realization that there may be more Democrats and events before the end of the day.
Well, Amy Jacobson is available if you're looking for panelists if Fox hosts a Democrat presidential debate, so just keep that in mind.
That's good.
Bret Baier, Fox News anchor, special report, 5 p.m. Chicago time, weekdays. The book, 3 Days at the Brink, FDR's Daring Gamble to Win World War II. Bret, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
See you guys. Have a good weekend.
You
Thanks.
too.
And just so you know, Quinn McCarthy, our producer, has read the book to his son, and he finished it last night.
Oh, nice. Very
his
good.
His son is 1.
I didn't know Quinn could read.
Oh, that's so mean. Bad, Dan. And Bret Baier joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
The stories you need to know to start your day. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
When it's cold outside, you can dress for it. But when your furnace gives out, hey, a blanket fort can only do so much. So call your local 1 Hour Heating and Air Conditioning. We'll replace your old furnace with a new high-efficiency one. And that beats a bunch of blankets any day. Right now, cozy up to big savings on a complete heating system. Call 855-1-HOUR.
Your comfort is just a call away. Call 1 Hour.
Terms and conditions may apply. Call for details. Independently owned and operated. Licensed in the respective state or county.
Oh, it's almost 7:30, and guess what happens at 7:30, Dan? That's when I get myself a hot cup of water and put 3 Balance of Nature tablets inside the fruits ones, and it coats my throat, and it's helping me boost my immune system.
Today, and it also makes reading the Bureau of Labor Statistics jobs report more enjoyable for you.
It does. It's all in the delivery, let me tell you. But right now, this new year, make a commitment to yourself to get healthy, and to do that, you have to boost your immune system, because it's only January, folks, and experts are predicting a terrible flu season this year.